investments having covered investments last week, tonight we are looking at pensions and retirement planning. And once again, we have the privilege of having Laverne Picard leading out on this seminar, and I'll pitch in wherever I feel I can add something to the presentation. But our key presenter today is going to be Laverne. So welcome once again, and it's over to you, Laverne.
Okay, thank you very much, Pastor, and your contributions are always most welcome. So, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see so many people joining us this evening. And without further ado, let's crack on because, as always, we've got quite a lot to cover. And pensions is something that I'm sure is dear to a lot of people's hearts. The main thing is people tend to say they don't understand pensions. So we want to make sure that you leave here this evening at least having a better understanding of pensions than maybe when you joined earlier tonight. So just to start, today's agenda is the stages of your financial life, retirement standards, what you can afford, sources of retirement income and UK state pension, retirement planning, and then hopefully there'll be time for questions and answers. So, how much will I need to retire? Now, that's a question that many of us can't even begin to answer. But the source which we've got this from, which is Which, January 2026, it tells us that 49% of people yet to retire are not confident how much they'll need for a comfortable retirement. And I would probably suggest it's even higher than that, simply because people just don't know what the future holds. They don't know if they'll be sick, and so will have to retire early, or if other circumstances will have an impact on their work life or their ability to generate an income and therefore pay into a pension. So if we look at the stages of your financial life, starting on the left when you're around age 20 to 30, you probably would have finished university or started your first job. And if you are ambitious, you might be looking to purchase your first house, get married, all these types of things, which reduces your overall level of wealth. But then as you get into your career from about age 30 onwards to retirement, you start to see promotions, you see a higher salary as you get pay rises, and then you start to want to move into a bigger house maybe, pay school fees because you can afford to pay that. So you can generally see on the curve that your income earning
Is
potential, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that your earning potential increases between the ages of 30 to 65, especially if you're in some type of professional career, be it a lawyer, an accountant, a banker, something like that. You can generally see quite a significant increase in your earning potential. And then as you reach retirement, obviously your earnings begin to fall because you're not earning as much as you used to. And also your expenses may fall as well. So although your wealth starts to decrease, it probably doesn't decrease at the same pace that you would think, simply because you've already established yourself, or hopefully you would have established yourself during your work life. So if we look at the three retirement living standards, Pensions UK has defined three tiers to help you set a retirement income target. So if you're looking at a minimum level of income in retirement, a single person would need approximately £13,400 a year. And if you're a couple, you're looking at around £21,600 a year. Now, that will include your state pension as well. So we'll say something about that later on. If you're looking at a moderate lifestyle in retirement, then as a single person, you'd probably need to be receiving a retirement income of at least £31,700 a year. And if you're a couple, you're looking at least £43,900 a year. And that's to continue the lifestyle that you're probably used to in terms of being able to go on holidays, buy the groceries that you want to buy, spend money on clothing, and have a retirement where it's not too dissimilar to when you were working. And things like mortgages, you probably would have already paid those off, unless you're renting, of course. then that's a fixed cost that will continue. But then if you really want a very comfortable lifestyle in retirement, then as a single person, according to Pensions UK, you would need at least £43,900 per annum as a retirement income, or as a couple, 60,600 per year. And that will give you much greater flexibility and holidays as well. So as you can see, these aren't small amounts. So it's really important that you start early in terms of building for your future. Pastor, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, no, go ahead.
No? Okay. So
Yeah.
what each standard buys a couple per year? So if you're on a minimum of £21,600 per year, you're looking at minimum repairs to your property of about £200 a year. You're looking at restricting your groceries to £100, £109 a week, which, as we're seeing food inflation creeping up, it's not really much. You've probably not got a car, you can't afford to run a car. And if you're lucky, it might be one UK holiday a year, and therefore it's just 1 week. So you might go to a caravan site or something like that. And clothing, possibly about £450 a year on clothing. Similar level for moderate, you're looking at about £500 for maintenance with £300 contingency. Your groceries, eating out, you're looking at about £166 a week, that type of thing. You may have a small car that you replace every 7 years, and you may go on a holiday for 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, all inclusive, maybe Europe, possibly Caribbean, something like that. Clothing, depending on if you buy a lot of clothing, you might be able to spend over £1.5 grand on clothing per person per year. But if you want a really comfortable retirement, then you need to be able to generate 60,600. And again, these are the things that you'll be able to buy. A small car, you replace it every 5 years. 2 week holidays, 4 star, 3 weeks, three long weekends in the UK, and up to 1,500 again on clothing. So that's what would make the difference in terms of the income in retirement. So where will your retirement income come from? So there are three different sources. You've got your state pension, and qualifying age at the moment is age 66, but that will rise to age 67 from April 2028. The full state pension is approximately £241 a week, and that's equivalent to £12,548 per year. But not everyone is entitled to receive a full state pension because it depends on how many years of national insurance contributions you have made. So if you've not lived in the UK very long and you've made minimum contributions to the national insurance, then you need to have at least 10 qualifying years to have some aspect of the state pension. Some people are fortunate enough to have worked in sectors or companies where you've had a final salary pension scheme. People like people who work in the NHS, teachers, police, public sector bodies typically have final salary pensions, and that guarantees you a set level of income throughout your remainder of your retirement from age 60, 65, whatever your normal retirement age is for that particular scheme, up until death. And that's a really good way of guaranteeing an income in retirement, and it's typically linked to increases in the retail price index. So as inflation increases, your guaranteed income will increase by the same amount. It is tax deductible, so you will pay tax on the income that you earn after personal allowances. Then anything above that will be taxed at 20% if you're a basic rate taxpayer, or if you're a higher rate taxpayer, then you're looking at 40% on anything over £50,270. It is becoming more and more rare in the private sector, but as I said, in the public sector, they do still offer final salary pensions. And then the last source of pension income would be your defined contribution pension, which is the most common type. And that's where you and your employer contribute into a group personal pension scheme. That could be with Aviva, Royal London, any of those sort of major providers. Nest is one of them as well. And the minimum contributions are 3% from your employer, 5% from you as the employee. But if you are fortunate enough to work for an employer that will offer you a higher rate of contribution. If you match it, then you can work for employers that will go up to 10, 15% contribution, as long as you're prepared to match that similar level of contribution. So access to the defined contribution pension is from age 55 upwards, but when we get to April 2028, that will be increased to age 57 onwards. So that means you can still be working and access your defined contribution pension pot. The first 25% will be tax-free, and then anything over and above the 25% will be taxed at your marginal rate of tax. So if you are working at the same time as drawing on your pension, then it could put you into a higher rate tax band. So just something to be mindful of. And something I didn't say with a final salary pension, but you also are offered a 25% tax-free lump sum as well with the guaranteed final salary pension. So as I said before, the UK state pension, the new state pension, which is £12,500 a year, works out at £230.25 a week. And the minimum qualifying years is 10 years of national insurance contributions, but to get the maximum amount, the £230.25 a week, you would have need to have paid 35 years worth of national insurance contributions. Now, this is for individuals born on or after, well, it's 1945, but who retire, I should say, on or after the 6th of April 2016. If you reach state pension age before the 6th of April 2016, then it's a basic state pension, which is a lot lower. It's £9,615.80 per annum, which is £184.90 per week. You will have had to contribute up to 30 years worth of national insurance contributions. There are minimums, but it is dependent on when you were born. So those are the two types of state pension systems, and obviously you can only access one of them depending on when you retired, whether it's before 2016 or after 2016. So national insurance years, how the qualification works. So for the new state pension, as I've said before, it is 35 years worth of national insurance contributions. If you've contributed anything less than that, over 10 years, but less than 35 years, then it will be prorated on that basis. So you'll get a portion of it, but not the full amount. Anything under 10 years, no state pension at all. Now, what counts towards your national insurance record? Your employment contributions, any self-employment contributions, national insurance credits, so any unemployment payments that you've received, any carers allowance that you've received, all of that will count towards your national insurance credits. And if you were a stay-at-home mum, then any childcare allowance that you've received will also count towards your national insurance credits. But you can make voluntary class 3 payments to buy any missing years, but you can only go back up to 6 years. So it's very important that you do check your eligibility for the state pension, and you can go online to do that. You can also complete what we call a BR19 form, and you can request a statement or a calculation of what your state pension is likely to look like once you reach that age. So this is just, going through what I've said before, that you need 35 years. If there's any gaps, you can fill them. But if you did contract out of the additional state pension before 2016, then you would have to make the extra payments to fill the gap. So just going on to how much to save then. So in terms of trying to answer how much would you need to have in your defined contribution pot, if you didn't have a final salary pension as well, then for a single person, you would be looking to save up to £330,000 to £490,000 into your defined contribution pension scheme. And from that pension scheme, you could either access that flexibly each year, or you could use that to buy an annuity. And the amount that you would need to buy an annuity that would give you an income of £31,700 per annum would be £312,000. If you are a couple and you would like to have the maximum amount, the moderate income on for a couple, it'd be £43,900 per year. You'd be looking at a pension pot of anywhere between £330,000 to £500,000, and that would be on a combined pension pot basis. The reason why you probably need less than you would do for a single person is because you've got shared living costs. So you're not duplicating the costs of living. And you could use that to buy an annuity that would be 343,900, and that would generate a retirement income, a joint retirement income of 43,900 per year.
Can you explain in layman's terms what annuity is?
Yes, good one. So an annuity would be like buying a final salary pension. So that would guarantee set level of income each year. You can either pay for an extended option to link it to inflation, or it could just be a fixed amount. So as the years go by and as inflation continues to erode the value of your money, if it doesn't grow with inflation, then that 31,700 per annum actually falls in its value, because the basket of goods that you can buy 5 years from now won't be the same amount, as we've seen with inflation, than what you could buy at today's prices. But if you link it to the cost of living retail price index, then it might cost slightly more than the 312,000, but at least that income will increase each year with inflation, to make sure that that level of lifestyle that you want to have will continue to be achieved, and the income won't be falling each year in line with inflation. So an annuity is like buying a final salary pension. It's a guaranteed level of income, and that will pay that level of income until you die. So the longer you live, the better it is in terms of how much it's cost you. But of course, if you died up to 5 years after purchasing an annuity, they will give back some of that money that you've used to purchase the annuity to a nominated beneficiary. But after that time, then the insurance company keeps it. So it's a bit of a gamble, really. And, the insurance company can either make money because you've purchased the annuity, but you've not lived long enough to receive the benefits from it, or you could benefit in terms of you've purchased an annuity and you've lived to 100, and the insurance company has based the income on you living to the average age for a man, which is 87, and for a woman, which is 89. So that's how the annuity works.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So how much to save? This is for a comfortable standard of living. Before, we looked at the moderate, the average standard of living. For a comfortable standard of living, you would need a drawdown pot. So you need an amount of £600,500 in your defined contribution pension pot. So again, I'm not looking at the defined benefit, the final salary pension. I'm looking purely at a defined contribution pension scheme. You would need just over £600,000 if you're a single person. And if you're a couple, you'd be looking at approximately 680,000. And again, it's because you've got joint living costs. So it's not double the amount of a single person, because you've got shared expenses. And again, you could use that pot to buy an annuity. And the pot there for 43,900 per annum, it would cost you around £513,200 to buy that guaranteed level of retirement income. And for a couple, it would be 646,600. And when you buy an annuity as a couple, what you buy is that when the first person dies, that annuity continues for the second person. Sometimes it continues at the same amount, but sometimes it's reduced. It might be 75% of what you were earning before, or 50%. It all depends. The better the payout, the more expensive it will be when you come to purchase the annuity. But that's where, working with an advisor, you can choose the annuity that's best for you and pays the best rate as well. So typically you'd go to the market, you'd have a look at what the best annuity rates are and the benefits that you can purchase with that. But like I said, working with an advisor is going to put you in the best position. Some pension schemes actually give you a guaranteed annuity rate, and sometimes those are more preferential than the rates that you can get in the market. So again, you have to check the scheme that you're in to see what they're offering and what you can and can't do with the lump sum of money that you've got in that pension pot. So when should you start saving? Well, as early as possible. The earlier you start to pay into a pension, the cheaper it is, for obvious reasons. It's got a longer time to grow. You've got the benefits of compound interest. All pensions tend to be invested in assets that return a level of income or returns greater than inflation. So they're very, very rarely invested in cash. That tends to be as you approach retirement, but they tend to be invested in equities. Typically at age 20, it would be a 100% equity portfolio. So you'd be investing in, things like the S&P 500, the UK FTSE 100, emerging market indices, that type of thing. At age 30, if you didn't start paying into a pension at age 20, then from age 30 onwards, you'd be looking at contributing about £423 a month. And then at age 40, £675 a month, and so on. So if you were sort of age 50 and you hadn't paid into a pension at all, then in order to get to some of the figures that we've talked about, you would really need to start contributing between 25 to 50% of your salary each month. Not many people can afford to do that. So the lesson learned here is start to pay into your pension as early as possible, because it's much cheaper, because it's got a longer time to grow, and therefore benefit from compound interest. So the average pensioner incomes in the UK, if we look at the average pensioner, for one that's not so well off, not a moderate income pensioner, then you're looking at £407 a week in terms of what their income looks like. For couples, where your income is £30,940 per year, that's about £595 a week. And for a single pensioner, the average is about £282 a week, and you're looking at £14,664 per year. So the pensioner that's on the £280 a week, you're not going to be able to afford your one holiday a year. You definitely can't afford to run a car, and maybe buying groceries might be something that's quite difficult for you, compared to the couple that's getting an income of about £30,940 a year, where it's probably going to be a little bit easier to go on a holiday or even run a car. So again, it's all about planning for your future and not just living in the here and now. So, key takeaways. I think we've managed to get through the slides much quicker this week. So obviously there might be more questions based on what's been shared so far. But the key takeaways and your action plan is to know your target. So again, it ties back to budgeting, it ties back to being disciplined about your savings, and it ties back to saving for your future using a pension scheme because of the tax efficiency of paying into a pension scheme over anything else that you might look to put your cash into, whether it's a bank account or an ISA. Paying into a pension is going to give you the greatest contribution to your pension because of the tax relief that goes with it, and also the employer contributions that you may attract as well by paying into a pension scheme. Understand your sources of income. So, are you eligible for a state pension? Are you eligible for a final salary pension? You may have worked at a previous employer where you had enrolled into a final salary scheme. I myself worked for the Cooperative Insurance many, many years ago, and so I do have a final salary pension, but I also have these defined contribution pension pots because of where I've worked subsequent to that first employer. So just check to see what sources of retirement income do you have access to in retirement. You can start or increase saving now. So if you think to yourself, well, I'm probably not going to be able to even meet the minimum level of pension income that's required, the 21,400, then now might be the time to start looking at what level of disposable income you have. And if you can afford to do that, start contributing into your defined pension with your workplace or a private personal pension, which you can set up for yourself, especially if you're self-employed. It's really good to set up a personal private pension and not just put your head in the sands and hope that, okay, when I reach retirement, I'll downsize from my house, or, I'll be leaving this country and going to live somewhere else. Things may not work the way that you had originally planned, but having that pension pot in place will alleviate many problems. And I say that because I do know a couple that left the UK and went to live in the Caribbean, and the husband had been self-employed. He never thought about pensions, being Seventh-day Adventist as well. He thought the Lord would have come by the year 2000. So he doesn't have a private pension. He doesn't have a workplace pension. And being self-employed, he wasn't always disciplined making his national insurance contribution. So again, when it comes to the state pension, very small amount, no pension funds to draw on. So that's him. The wife did pay into a workplace pension scheme, but unfortunately, when they moved abroad, she took a tax-free lump sum to use to purchase a property that they wanted to live in. And unfortunately, the remaining funds that are available are just not sufficient for them to meet their overheads each month. So they are struggling. And these issues are real. They do creep up on you. When you're young and you talk about retiring and getting old, it seems like centuries away. But I'm sure myself and Pastor can attest that before you know it, you're almost there. So you really do have to plan and not ignore the fact that one day you will get older. And unless the Lord comes, you'll still be on this earth and you'll still need to eat, live, pay your bills. So you really do need to think about your future and save towards that. So choose how you will access your pot. So if you do have a defined contribution pension, there are a number of ways that you can access the money in your pension. You can do what's called flexible access. So you draw down various different amounts throughout the year. You can make it regular or it can be ad hoc. Maybe you've got a part-time job in retirement working 2 days a week. So you use your pension to top up maybe every 2 or 3 months. You can do it that way. Or, as I've said before, you could buy an annuity where you've got a guaranteed level of income. And it all depends what suits you as an individual. There's no one cap fits all. So when you work with an advisor, they'll look at what you need to achieve in retirement and then they can help you to make a decision in terms of what's the best way to access your pension fund. And don't rely on average pensioner income. Don't rely on a state pension because, state pension is subject to changes in legislation. A government at any point can decide to reduce it. They can decide not to link the increases to inflation. Many things can change. So if you're relying on a state pension to look after you in retirement, things could change significantly whereby you may be struggling. So again, do what you can do whilst you can do that in order to secure a retirement income once you get to that age. And of course, you don't have to retire once you reach age 65, 67. You may want to, but if you have the opportunity to continue with a part-time job, then that's something that you might have to consider out of necessity rather than out of, the fact that you enjoy working and therefore you'd like to continue working for a few more years. So those are things to consider. So I appreciate I've probably gone through that quite quickly this evening. So if there is anything that you'd like me to go over again, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. But yes, start planning today, check your pensions, check the living standards, and go online and get a statement for what your state pension will look like once you reach age 67.
Okay. Thank
Over to
you. Thank you
Pastor.
so much. There are a few questions. I'll start with those on the chat
Mhm.
while everyone else is preparing their own questions. So the first question is, how do you buy an extra annuity?
Well, you wouldn't buy an extra annuity, but how do you buy an annuity full stop? So
Okay.
you would, if you've been saving into a workplace pension, that's called a defined contribution pension scheme. So you would use whatever funds are in the defined contribution pension scheme to purchase an annuity.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. And so that annuity then becomes like your defined benefits pension, which is
kind of, yes.
guaranteed
It's a
for the
guaranteed
rest of
level
your
of
life.
income. But you can only use your defined contribution pot. So you couldn't sell a house and with the equity that you've got, use it to buy an annuity.
No.
It's got to be your pension fund. that you use to buy
Okay.
an annuity. Yeah.
So while you're talking about whether to buy an annuity or
Okay.
to draw down,
Oh,
what are the pros
I'm
and
gonna
cons
plug
of
something. I'm gonna plug something from there because I'm charging my phone, but it's not
can
charging.
you mute, please?
My charger. What is it?
Can I ask everyone to mute their devices? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in one of the slides we talked about once you reach a retirement age and you choose to retire,
Yeah.
you've got two options. One
Yeah.
is to draw down, and the other one is to buy an annuity.
Yes.
So could you expound on that and explain a little bit of how and what might influence that decision, in particular with reference to the recent tax legislation where the pension pot is now subject to inheritance tax as well?
Yes. Okay. So from April 2027, anything that you've got in your defined pension contribution pot will now form part of your estate for inheritance tax purposes. Previously, a defined contribution pension was used as part of what we call estate planning. So, individuals who were maybe doctors, dentists, teachers who had accumulated a decent level of final salary pension would put any additional surplus income into a defined contribution pension, knowing that when they pass away, they could use that to pass on to their children without incurring any inheritance tax liability. Of course, now that's going to fall into your estate from 2027. Then individuals now are thinking, well, I may as well start accessing my pensions. And yes, like you say, there are many different ways to access the pension, and there are pros and cons of each one. So if you purchase an annuity, you know, the benefit of doing that is having a defined level of income each year that you don't have to worry about until you know, pass away, let's say, and even then you don't have to worry about it because once you've died, you've died. But what I should say is that if you've used your money to purchase an annuity, unless you've purchased these additional add-ons with it, so there's things like within the first 5 years, a certain level of the amount that you've used to purchase the annuity will be returned to a nominated beneficiary. That's one option that you can buy, or it could be used to pay a nominated beneficiary, let's say 50% of what you were getting from your annuity. So instead of getting 20,000 a year, your nominated beneficiary can get 10,000 a year. At least your pot continues to be used. Otherwise, like a final salary pension, after the second person dies, it dies with you. So, you may have put 300,000 into an annuity, purchased an annuity. Unfortunately, you and your wife go on holiday, you both passed away, the money's gone. Okay. If that money was in a defined contribution pension pot, you didn't use it to buy an annuity, you and your wife went on holiday, you both passed away, that money is there to hand down to your beneficiary, which would be your daughter. Okay. So those are the pros and cons that it can be used to pass down to the next generation if it's just in a what you call a flexible access drawdown pot, which is your defined contribution. Or if you do purchase the annuity, yes, it's giving you a guaranteed level of income, but you don't know how long you're going to live. And it may be that the insurance company will keep the surplus because you've died before you've exhausted the annuity. And so those are some of the pros and cons. The other thing with the annuity, you can't switch off the income. So once you've started the annuity, it will continue to pay that level of income each year. If you're earning, let's say, or if you're receiving income from a final salary pension that already puts you into the basic rate tax band, which most pensions will do, the income from the annuity may put you into a higher rate tax band. So then you'll end up paying 40% on the
Yeah.
income that you're receiving from the annuity. So from a tax planning point of view, it might not be the best thing to do. It's probably better to access money as and when you need it to keep the overall level of income within the basic tax rate band of paying 20% tax.
But when you do that, then you have to reduce the risk because at that age you don't want it to be in volatile investments. Um,
Potentially, but for the last sort of 3 to 4 years, when they de-risk your pension, they tend to move from equities to bonds or fixed interest assets. The last few years, that has been the most volatile asset in the market.
yeah, yeah,
Traditionally, it wasn't, but over the last few years, because countries like America and England are so leveraged in terms of the debt, I mean, the American economic debt now as a country is approaching $39 trillion. So when a country has a level of debt that high and they're issuing bonds, the risk of default is higher, therefore it's
yeah,
not as attractive. So you're not getting people wanting to buy those bonds, and so they're quite volatile. Whereas
yeah, yeah,
previously they were seen as quite an attractive instrument. Now you've got the Japanese and the Chinese selling those American bonds because they view that there's a risk of default, high default risk. So again, this is where working with an advisor, you can have a look at the portfolio that you're invested in, especially if you're in what's called a life strategy fund, where it automatically de-risks the closer you get to retirement. You may find that instead of earning a return on your income, you're actually decreasing the value of your pension pot each year. And I've seen that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen that.
So there's another question here. If you have a final salary pension, but leave that employer, will you still be able to benefit from that pension scheme? If
Absolutely.
so, how would that work?
Okay. So even when you leave that employer, they should be sending you statements, regular statements each year, at least once a year, to say, this is the value or what we predict will be your income in retirement. If you haven't received one and you do know you have one, you either have to contact the previous employer to ask them who are the trustees of that final salary pension. Then you can contact them and ask them for a statement. If you are not able to contact a previous employer, maybe they've gone out of business since you were a member of the pension scheme, it doesn't mean that you've lost your pension, but you'd have to try to find out who the pension trustees are, contact them, give them your details, your national insurance number, when you worked there, if you can remember, and then they'll be able to generate a statement for you showing what level of retirement income you are entitled to. And that'll be based on the number of years service and what the salary was at the time when you were there, either an average salary over the period that you worked there or the final salary when you left. But you are still entitled to that pension that's in your name. It's yours, and it doesn't matter where you go, it belongs to you.
Okay, thank you. Another question here from Ifeanyi is, given the aging population and the declining birth rate, do you think pension as we know it will remain the same? Is state pension likely to be means tested going forward? And if yes, does it really make sense to keep maxing out workplace pension contribution?
Okay, good question. I mean, none of us know what the future holds. Okay,
Mhm.
so trying to second guess what's going to happen in the future, I always think is not a good thing to do. All you can do is work with what you know now. Many things could happen in the future. And like I said, when I was younger, I never thought I'd get to this age. I'm not too far off pension age. So, you've just got to work with the information that you've got now. And if you think you can afford to risk, leaving it till later on and then start to put a higher level of contributions into your pensions, fair enough. But I think the earlier that you start, little and often, it will build up to something meaningful. As for the state pension, as I said, governments can change anything at any time. They could
Yeah,
stop linking it to the retail price index, CPI, or they could reduce it, they could means test it, anything could happen,
yeah,
But based on what you know now, you've got to make a decision
yes,
because
yeah.
the future is uncertain. We just don't know.
Yes, that reminds me of a scripture which says, "He that watches the weather will
We
not
never do
cry."
anything.
you will not plant.
You will never
So,
plant. Because
so
what if it rains tomorrow? What if the sun comes? What if this?
yeah. But a few years ago, my dissertation for my MBA was the pension crisis in Europe.
Hmm.
And it speaks exactly to the question that was raised.
Yeah.
And that's why governments across Europe are raising the pension age
Age. Yeah.
because there are not enough working young people to
Yeah.
keep paying into the pension pots for the state
Absolutely.
to be able to afford it. And in fact, earlier this year, there was an article that appeared on the BBC, which actually said there are certain regions in the UK that are never going to receive a pension because by the survival rate or the death rate is well below the 87, 89 that you mentioned.
Yes.
It's about 60 and
Hmm.
63, 64. So they will never actually get to the point where they are able to start drawing from the state pension. And that's how the governments are trying to reduce the number of people that benefit from the state pension.
And why did they think
Over
they
time.
wouldn't reach 80 and 87? Is that
It's,
because
it's,
they'd be overworked or?
it's the life expectancy in that particular area.
Right. Okay. In a
Yeah.
particular area. Yeah.
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 So that will just exclude them because the rules are not specific. They are generic. They are blanket cover. So
Yes.
if you live in an area with a very low life expectancy
Yes.
and you're not going to reach 70, so you'll never actually get state pension.
Yeah, that's true. And typically in those areas, well, you tend to find more people are claiming benefits anyway. So,
Yes.
had government handouts over the years anyway. But I think, what you're finding with people living longer, it's not necessarily quality of life, it's quantity of years because medication is keeping people artificially alive longer than would naturally cease to live. I think of my poor dear mother who's on so many tablets and she's 95 and I mean she's no longer living, she's just existing. And I know I for one do not want any tablets, but that's me because I just rather things happen naturally. And I think that's something that, well, will they be able to change that? People are medicated up in their older age and they are living longer, but that just adds to the burden for the state pension because people are living up to 100. I mean, there's a lady in our church who's 102, and yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see it as a blessing, but anyway, that's aside from the point. But these people are continually to be paid state pension.
Yeah. So we often say, by the way, a workbook has been posted on the chat. So download it while we are answering questions.
Yeah.
And so there's a request here for you to repeat how much NI contributions you have made and how to add to it.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. So if you go onto the HMRC website and you type in your details and it prints off or it provides for you a level of state pension that you will be entitled to once you reach age 67. And maybe you'll fall short by 4 or 5 years or even more. You can top up to 6 years of that shortfall. Anything beyond that, you wouldn't be able to. But let's say you had contributed 28 years worth of national insurance contributions by the time you reach age 67. You could add another 6 years to that. So obviously that would give you 34 years, or maybe it was 29 years and you've had 6 years to get to 35. So that would get you closer to the 35 years. Or if you're new to the UK, you've only just started working and you find that probably once you reach state pension age, you'd only have 15 years, let's say, again, you could do 6 years worth of national insurance contributions, provided you were in the UK at that time working, you could top it up. So it's a one-off payment. Yes, it is a one-off payment to top you up, and it's not an ongoing thing. But it does help because for the small amount that you end up paying to top up the pension, you could end up receiving that for another 30 years. Like I said, if you're living to 95 or 100, that state pension will continue to be paid until you die. So it would be worthwhile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question is, the gold standard in pensions, we often refer to the defined benefit pension as the gold standard
Yeah.
because again, it's a final salary and it really pays well. But the question is, given that it can't be passed on, it dies with you,
Hmm.
should one be diversifying? Should one be looking at having another pot somewhere? That can then be passed on to your loved ones.
Well, with a defined pension, if you're married, it can pass on to your spouse, and
Hmm.
they would get 50% of whatever you were entitled to under the final salary, average salary, defined pension
Until their death.
until their death.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you got young ones below 21 as well, sometimes
Yep,
in
sometimes they will
education.
allow a certain amount to be paid for those dependents and then it would stop. So if you wanted to have a pension pot that you could potentially pass down to your beneficiaries, then you'd have to set up either a personal pension or if you've since left the employer where you had the defined benefit pension, then join the group pension scheme, which is a defined contribution pension scheme. So you could either set up a separate one or, be a member of your current pension scheme if it's not a defined benefit pension scheme. But with a final salary pension, you don't have a choice of, diversifying or anything like that. It's the pension trustees that invest that money. And so the risk sits with them. All you need to know is that's what I'm going to get regardless. It's not linked to the stock market or anything like that. That's the pension trustees who have the risk. Whereas with a defined contribution pension, the risk sits with you in that you might exhaust the fund, use more than you need to before you actually die, so you haven't got enough left when you come to the later part of your years, or it might be invested in a way that if the stock market crashes, the value of your pension pot's going to fall. And that's why some people purchase an annuity, because again, once you've purchased the annuity, you've removed that risk, any stock market risk, and now it's the insurer that sits with that risk, you know, because they're going to pay you a set level of income regardless of anything else that happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the final question here on the chat before we open it up is a top up. You said I can top up my state pension um, by up to 6 years.
Yeah.
Is that a one-off, or can I be paying it in small amounts?
It's a one-off payment.
Okay.
It's a one-off payment. So, it depends, how much you were earning or how much you do earn, and therefore what level of national insurance contributions. But it tends to be a small amount relative to what you earn, kind of thing. So it is worth looking into, getting an estimate on the HMRC website and just making that payment. I mean, you don't have to make it until you're closer to retirement age. So, if
Okay.
you're in your 40s, there's no point doing it now. May as well wait till you're closer to retirement and then do it then.
Okay. Okay. So in your workbook, all of these sources of information in terms of checking what your contributions are,